2003 Toyota Highlander, front brake pads and rotor replacement. I'm Brian Essett from How To Automotive. I'm going to walk you through that process. So we're going to get started by getting the front of the vehicle in the air. And if you're doing this at home, use floor jacks and jack stands and go ahead and remove your front. So to get started, what we're going to do is remove the caliper and caliper bracket. To do that, we're going to remove the two 14mm bolts here and here. After getting the bolts out, you'll take the caliper off itself and kind of just set it up on top of the suspension here. Somewhere safe where it's not going to fall and like damage the line, so you want it up there pretty good. After that, you can go ahead and remove on the back side of the bracket. There's a 17mm bolt here and a 17mm bolt here. Go ahead and remove those two. After getting it off, just set it aside for a minute, and in a few minutes we're going to do a little prep work on this. Okay, so on this model, on this brake job, we're replacing the rotor, and we need to get it off, and most likely it's going to be stuck to the hub. So the way that you get it off is you take a 8x125 bolt, and it has a couple of spots where it has threaded holes in it, and you can thread the bolt in there like so. Once you get it threaded in there, you can take like an impact gun or a screwdriver or air ratchet or something, and then you just turn it in, and it'll pop the rotor off the hub for you. So before we put our new rotor on, if the hub is really rusty, you can take a little wire brush like this. You can kind of knock off some of the surface rust, and that'll help the rotor sit flush against the hub. It's like when you get your new rotors, it's going to have this little oil that they put on there for when so it doesn't rust on the shelves and stuff. So what you want to do is take a little brake clean like this, maybe a rag, and wash this oil off the surface of the rotor front and back. So I went ahead and slipped on the new rotor, and then I used the lug nut to kind of hold it in place. So now we need to do a little prep work before we put the caliper bracket on. We need to prep our brake pads and our caliper bracket itself. So we're going to take our bracket here and remove our old pads, kind of set it aside. And then what we need to do is some brake pads you get may come with these new hardware shims. If they come with them, I recommend replacing them. If they don't, if they're in good shape, what you can do is just take a wire brush like so and clean them up. So after cleaning the hardware up or replacing it, if yours came with it, we need to transfer our shims to our new pads. If yours new pads don't come with shims, then what you do is you remove the shims from the old pads and transfer them over, and maybe use a wire brush to clean these up too. And what I like to do is I like to take a little bit of it's called Seal Glide, or they have different brands, but it's a special grease made just for brakes. And what I like to do is I take a little dab and I put a thin layer on the inside on the back of the pad. Then I'll put the shim on after getting a thin layer on, and then I'll put another thin layer over the shin. So what it does when you put grease on the back and under the shims is these shims slightly move a little bit as you brake, and it helps reduce friction, and that friction causes squeaks. So this will reduce squeaks. You want to be careful not to get the grease on the inside of the pad though. Next, we want to take these little boots and pull them back off the slide pins here. Pull the slide pins out, wipe the old grease off, and put a little thin layer of this new grease on there. And once you got it on there, then what you want to do is you want to work the grease into the bore here, and you'll do that front and back. And sometimes, yeah, they're different, so you want to make sure you don't mix them up. So do one at a time, and put the fresh grease on there and work them back and forth, and make sure everything's sliding the way it's supposed to. So now after lubing up the pins, we're ready to put the bracket back on. But before we do, I'd like to take the bolts here and put a little of this blue thread sealer Loctite on it. Loctite is another brand. This is Permanent brand. It's called Thread Locker or Threads. Anyways, what it does is it's like a little glue to help prevent the bolts from coming back off, because they don't have lock washers on these. So I recommend putting a little dab of that on the thread. So then you're gonna bolt your bracket back up, put the bolts in and start them, and tighten them down or torque them down to 79 foot-pounds. So now what we need to do is press the piston back into the bore of the caliper. You also want to inspect your boot here and make sure there's no tears or rips, or if it's not, make sure it's not leaking any fluids or anything. If it goes out too far, it also can pinch the seal and cause it to leak and be damaged. So those are some things you want to check for if the caliper needs to be replaced. So when we press this piston back in, I'm not going to open the bleeder screw. And so what we're going to do is we're going to lower the vehicle down and remove a little bit of the brake fluid from the master cylinder. And the reason why is when we press this piston in, this fluid's going to go back up the line and into the master cylinder. And if it's over full, or if it's too full, it'll overflow into the bay, engine bay, pop the cap off. And so you don't want to do that. So what we do is remove just an ounce or two. So you'll want to suck a couple ounces out of your master cylinder and use like a turkey baster, or I have like a special tool here to kind of you pump it and it sucks the fluid out. If you don't have that, a turkey baster works great, or like those little things you use to get the boogers out of a kid's nose, those work good too. Just suck a couple ounces out, and so when we press the piston in on the caliper, it doesn't overflow the master cylinder and spill into the bay. And then what we'll do is we'll press this piston in. Like I'm using a C-clamp here just with the old brake pad, and I'll turn the C-clamp in and it'll push the piston in. They also have brake tools designed just to push the pistons in. You can use either one. And once you're done with this, what we're going to do is we're going to pump the brake pedal, and that's going to pump the brake fluid back into the caliper, and you'll have a nice firm brake pedal, and you will not have to bleed the brakes. So after you get your pistons pressed back in, it'll look just like that. Now what you can do is put your new brake pads into the caliper bracket, and then you can take your caliper and make sure that the brake hose is not twisted, and put it back on. You'll have to push your pins inwards, and then we're going to take our bolts here and put a little of that blue thread sealer on these two, and then we're going to start these and torque these down to 25 foot-pounds. So after the caliper is remounted and retorqued, you'll do the exact same process for the opposite side, and after you're done, you'll put your wheels on, torque your wheels down, then you'll lower the vehicle down and pump the brake pedal 6 or 7 times to get that fluid back into the master cylinder like I was talking about earlier. And you shouldn't have to bleed the brakes, but for some reason after pumping 6 or 7 times, and if there's still like a spongy feel, then I would recommend you bleed. And that completes the front brake pad and rotor replacement on a 2003 Toyota Highlander. I'm Brian Nessick from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos and encourage you to subscribe for more valuable videos like this. Thank you again.